Hello everyone. Today we are going to start with part 4 of the Chinese statue. Since it's a long story and we have been completing 3 parts of it, now we are going to do the 4th part. In the last video we had completed till that Sir Alexander had put up the statue in his drawing room on a mantelpiece so that people could see and appreciate its beauty. Now let's look further. Being an exact man, Sir Alexander wrote a long and detailed will in which he left precise instructions for the disposal of his estate, including what was to happen to the little statue after his death. Since he was an exact man means he was a perfectionist, as we have seen till now. So he had made a long will. In that will, he had written some instructions at what to do with his property after his death, and at the same time he had put some instructions regarding the statue कि उस स्टैचू का क्या करना होगा आगे खानदान में. He bequeathed the Emperor Kung to his first son, requesting that he do the same in order that the statue might always pass to the first son or a daughter if the direct male line faltered. Bequeathed means छोड़ा, मतलब उसको जो है वारिस के तौर पे चुना. किसको? अपने बड़े बेटे को. ही लेफ्ट द स्टैचू ऑफ दैट एम्परर कुंग टू हिज एल्डेस्ट सन एंड ही इंस्ट्रक्टेड हिम कि तुम भी अपने ख़ानदान में यही करना कि यू हैव टू गिव दिस टू योर फर्स्ट सन एंड सो ऑन. दिस विल बी carried on through generations, that always the statue will be given to the first son or daughter. If suppose the family does not have any son, so it will be given to the first daughter. He also made a provision that the statue was never to be disposed of unless the family's honor was at stake. He also made a strict provision कि ये स्टैचू कभी भी सेल पे नहीं जाएगी, इसको सेल नहीं किया जाएगा जब तक कि फैमिली के ऑनर पे या फैमिली की इज्जत पे बात ना बन जाए कि हमें उसे बेचना पड़ जाए. Sir Alexander Heathcote died at the stroke of midnight on his 70th year. So when he was 70 years of age, he died at midnight. Right? His firstborn, Major James Heathcote, was serving his queen in the Boer War at the time he came into possession of the Ming Emperor. So his first son was whom? James Heathcote, and he was serving under the queen only. And he was serving under the queen at Boer War when he received this statue as a property or as a possession. The major was a fighting man commissioned with the Duke of Wellington's regiment, and although he had little interest in culture, even he could see the family heirloom was no ordinary treasure, so he loaned the statue to the regimental mess at Halifax in order that the emperor could be displayed in the dining room for his brother officers to appreciate. So here we are told that he was a Major James Heathcote, and he was serving in the war. Since he was much interested in war and had no interest in culture and all, but he knew कि ये जो ख़ानदान में परंपरा चली आ रही है of the statue, this statue has to be preserved. So what he did was he loaned it, यानी उसने उधार पे दे दिया. किसको? At the regimental mess में सब लोग खाना खाते थे. So at the regimental mess of Halifax he gave it so that it could be decorated at one corner, and his brother fighters also should appreciate the beauty of that statue. When James Heathcote became colonel of the Dukes, the emperor stood proudly on the table alongside the trophies won at Waterloo and Sebastopol, in the Crimea and Madrid, and there the Ming statue remained until the colonel's retirement to his father's house in Yorkshire, when the emperor returned once again to the drawing room mantelpiece. So this shows the journey of that statue. Now when Major James Heathcote was promoted to become a colonel, so at his office, besides the trophies, the statue of the Emperor Kung was also placed beside the trophies. These trophies were actually one at the Battle of Waterloo and Sebastopol, which were held in Crimea and Madrid. And here the statue was placed along with the trophies, and it remained there till his retirement. Now, when he retired, he again went back to the same place, Yorkshire, where his father used to live, and there again the statue was placed at the same mantelpiece in the dining room. In the drawing room. The colonel was not a man to disobey his late father even in death, and he left clear instructions that the heirloom must always be passed on to the firstborn of the head courts unless a family honor was in jeopardy. So the colonel was actually an obedient son, and he knew what his father's instructions were and how to keep it. So he also gave the instructions that this statue has to be preserved throughout the generations of their family, and it should be given to the first heir or to the first son or daughter, and it should not be put on sale till the family's honor is at stake. Colonel James Heathcote, MC, did not die a soldier's death. He simply fell asleep one night by the fire, the Yorkshire post on his lap. Now, he did not die while fighting in the battle, but he died when he was sitting by the fireplace at Yorkshire with a Yorkshire Post. There was a magazine on his lap, and there he sat, and he fell asleep, and he could not ever wake up. So this way he died. So the colonel's firstborn was Reverend Alexander Heathcote. Reverend means a person who was working as a priest under a church. Was at the time presiding over a small flock in the parish of Much Hatham in Hertfordshire. So he was working as a priest in the small, and he was presiding over a small flock. Small flock means some people were there where he was discussing with them some religious things at Hertfordshire. So when he buried his father with military honors, then this Emperor Kung's statue was given to him, and he placed it on the mantelpiece of the Vicarage. Vicarage is a place where it is a house near the church where the priests and priestess they live there. So few members of the Mothers Union appreciated the masterpiece, but one or two old ladies were heard to remark on its delicate carving. So most of the people of that Mothers Union, they appreciated the beauty of the statue, and one or two ladies also appreciated its carving. And it was not until Reverend became the Right Reverend and the little statue found its way into the bishop's palace that the emperor attracted the admiration he deserved. Now later on, this Reverend Alexander Heathcote became the Right Reverend, means he became the highest official of the church, and so he was given a palace to live in, a big house which was said to be the bishop's palace. And now the statue was finding an adequate place where the people could come and appreciate it. Many of those who visited the palace and heard the story of how the bishop's grandfather had acquired the Ming statue were fascinated to learn of the disparity between the magnificent statue and its base. It always made a good after-dinner story. So whoever used to visit the palace, and when they heard the story of the grandfather, Sir Alexander, then after that his father, after that how the statue had passed to this third generation, they used to appreciate the difference between the base and the top of the statue, and it was always a topic of discussion after dinner. God takes even his own ambassadors, but he did not do so before allowing Bishop Heathcote to complete a will leaving the statue to his son, with his grandfather's exact instructions carefully repeated. So God always takes good people very early. So what he did was that Sir Alexander, this Bishop Heathcote, had not been allowed to complete the will in order to bequeath that Emperor Kung's statue to the further generation. The bishop's son, Captain James Heathcote, was a serving officer in his grandfather's regiment, so the Ming statue returned to the mess table in Halifax. Now, this Alexander Heathcote's son was Captain James Heathcote, and he was serving as a military person. So he was working in his grandfather's regiment, and this Ming statue was given to him. So again it found its place at the mantelpiece of the Halifax at the mess table. So the Ming statue returned to the mess table. During the emperor's absence, the regimental trophies had been augmented by those struck for Vipres, the Marne and the Verdun. Now when the emperor was not there, then the regimental trophies of which places? Ypres, Marne and Verdun, they used to decorate that place. The regiment was once again at war with Germany, and young Captain James Heathcote was killed on the beaches of the Dunkirk and died intestate. Thereafter, English law, the known wishes of his grandfather, and common sense prevailed, and the little emperor came into possession of the captain's 2-year-old son. Now, what happened when war started at Germany and James Heathcote had died during the war? He could not speak out the will and so on. But according to the English law and according to the common sense used by the entire families, this Ming statue was passed on to the 2-year-old son of James Heathcote. Alex Heathcote was, alas, not of the mettle of his doughty ancestors, and he grew up feeling no desire to serve anyone other than himself. Now, this 2-year-old son, when he grew up, was Alex Heathcote, and he was not of the same nature as his great grandfather, his grandfather, his father were. He didn't wish to serve anybody and do any job under a queen or anybody. He wished to serve himself only. When Captain James Heathcote had been so tragically killed, Alexander's mother lavished everything on the boy that her meager income would allow. It didn't help, and it was not entirely young Alex's fault that he grew up to be, in the words of his grandmother, a selfish, spoiled little brat. Now, when at a young age he lost his father at the age of 2 years, as Heathcote had died, James Heathcote, to his mother, Alex Heathcote's mother, tried to furnish him with all the luxuries of life that she could shower on him through her meager income. But this did not help, and the entire fault was not of Alex. It was some fault of his mother also, that he grew up to be a spoilt brat. When Alex left school only a short time before he could have been expelled, he found he could never hold down a job for more than a few weeks. It always seemed necessary for him to spend a little more than he and finally his mother could cope with. The good lady, deciding she could take no more of this life, departed it, to join all other Heathcotes, not in Yorkshire but in heaven. Now, when Alex had done his schooling and he was actually expelled from the school, he found that he could not do any service under anybody even for a long time. It was only within a few weeks that he left the job, or he was just expelled from the job. So it seemed necessary for him to spend a little more than he wanted to spend more than he had with himself. Now finally his mother could not bear this thing, and finally she thought that this life has become a burden for her, and she left also from this world. She departed from this world to join the other Heathcotes in heaven. Now, here after his mother's death in the early 60s, when clubs and casinos opened in Britain, this young Alex, he found that this is the way to earn money without actually having to do any work. He developed a system for playing roulette with which it was impossible to lose. So he developed a system of using roulette, a game in which he could win only without much loss. He did lose, so he refined the system and promptly lost more. He refined the system once again, which resulted in him having to borrow to cover his losses. Why not? If the worst came to the worst, he told himself he could always dispose of the little Ming emperor. So, by using that Rowlett system, he lost. Again, he refined that system, he tried to improve his trick of play, but he lost more. Then again he tried to refine, again he lost more. And then he knew that nothing will happen. I will borrow money from the people, and if not, if worst and worst happens, then what I can do is sell this statue of the Ming emperor. The worst did come to the worst, as each one of Alex's newly refined systems took him progressively into greater debts. Now he was plunged into debts, as he was not, or you can see he was adamant to just go on playing, and this plunged him into debts until the casinos began to press him for payment. Now the casinos used to ask him the payment, that you have to pay it. When finally one Monday morning Alex received an unsolicited call from the two gentlemen who seemed determined to collect some 8,000 pounds he owed their masters, and hinted at bodily harm if the matter was not dealt with within 14 days. Alex caved in. After all, his great-great-grandfather's instructions had been exact. The Ming statue was to be sold if the family honor was ever at stake. Now he got on Monday morning an unsolicited call. That means some unknown call was given to him from the two men who said that you have to pay 8,000 pounds, and if not, then you will be harmed bodily, physically, and within 14 days you have to pay the amount, otherwise you will be harmed. So after all, he knew that the will of the great-great-grandfather was that if the family's honor is at stake, I can sell the Ming statue. So he took off the little emperor from the mantelpiece in his Cadogan Gardens flat and stared down at his delicate handiwork, at least having the grace to feel a little sad at the loss of the family heirloom. He felt a little sad at the family's heirloom, but he knew that it could save him. So he drove to Bond Street and delivered the masterpiece to Sotheby's, giving instructions that the emperor should be put up for auction. So there in the Sotheby's, he gave it for selling that to be put on the auction. The head of the Oriental department, a pale thin man, appeared at the front desk to discuss the masterpiece with Alex. Looking not unlike the Ming statue he was holding so lovingly in his hands. It will take a few days to estimate the true value of the piece, he purred, but I feel confident on a cursory glance that the statue is as fine an example of pen-cue as we have ever had under the hammer. That's no problem, replied Alex, as long as you can let me know what it's worth within 14 days. Now, head of the Oriental department, he came to the reception and he discussed about the statue with Alex and said that it will take a few days to estimate its value. And he said that, but I am sure it would be of great value, as it seems to be a fine example of pen-cue we have ever had under the hammer. And Alex said that within 14 days I want to know its amount. Oh, certainly. I feel sure I could give you a floor piece by Friday. Couldn't be better, said Alex. An expert said that by Friday I will tell you the exact amount of it. During that week, he contacted all his creditors, and without exception, they were prepared to wait and learn the appraisal of the expert. Alex duly returned to Bond Street on Friday with a large smile on his face. He knew that what his great-great-grandfather had paid for the piece, and felt sure that the statue must be worth more than 10,000 pounds, a sum that would not only yield him enough to cover all his debts, but also leave him a little over to try out his new refined system on the Rowlett table. As he climbed the steps of the Sotheby's, Alex silently thanked his great-great-grandfather. Now, after a week, within that week, he called all his creditors that your amounts will be paid, but you will have to wait a little. So all of them agreed to it. And when he reached on Friday with a big smile on his face to Sotheby's, he thanked his great-great-grandfather for leaving a statue that would at least be of 10,000 pounds, in which he could pay his debts and also leave a little more money so that he can try again the trick for playing at the roulette table. He asked a girl on the reception if he could speak to the head of the Oriental department. She picked up an internal phone and the expert appeared a few moments later at the front desk with a somber look on his face. Alex's heart sank as he listened to his words. A nice little piece, your emperor, but unfortunately a fake. Probably about 250 years old, but only a copy of the original. I am afraid copies were often made because. How much is it worth? Interrupted an anxious Alex. 700 pounds, 800 at the most. Now, when he asked the girl to have a talk with the boss, of the Oriental department, then he appeared before him and he had a somber look on his face and said that it is a fake statue and it would not cost more than 700 or 800 pounds. Enough to buy a gun and some bullets, thought Alex sardonically as he turned and started to walk away. Now, Alex said that, thought in his mind that, okay, with this I can buy a gun and some bullets to kill myself. And then he turned and was going away. I wonder, sir, continued the expert. Yes, sell the bloody thing, said Alex without bothering to look back. The expert said that, I wonder, sir. Immediately Alex said that, please sell it off. And what do you want me to do with the base? The base? Repeated Alex, turning round to face the Orientalist. The Orientalist said that, what about the base? Then Alex said, what about the base means what? Yes, the base is quite magnificent, 15th century. Undoubtedly a work of genius, I can't imagine how. Lot number 103, announced the auctioneer. What am I bid for this magnificent example of? The expert turned out to be right in his assessment. At the auction at Sotheby's that Thursday morning, I obtained the little emperor of 720 guineas and the base that was acquired by an American gentleman of not unknown parentage for 22,000 guineas. So, this means that the base was quite precious. It was sold to an American at 22,000 guineas, while the statue was taken up by the narrator in 720 guineas. So this means the base was quite precious. It was made by an expert and it was a magnificent example. So here ends up the story, and hope you people have understood the story. Thank you.